right, in this video, I'm going to cover with you how accruals work. Okay, so the first thing to think about or know about accruals is we at Alliance are going to be setting up the accruals for you. So we typically look at your vacation policy as you have it, and then we set up the accruals. So in the company setup accruals area, you'll be able to review that. I am going to put a big recommendation here. Do not change what you see in here. If you need assistance with it, please let us know. But a lot of what you're going to see in this setup has a huge impact on what the employees see. So if you think something looks incorrect, please give us a call. We'll be happy to correct anything that you need help with. Okay. All right, so the first thing, I'm looking at an example of a policy. So this one's called the PTO policy in your setup, right? So what it looks like it's doing is it looks like this particular policy happens on the employee's anniversary, and then the hours get cleared on the anniversary date as well. So, and if you look down at the bottom, you got a little table, and so what this tells me is if an employee's been with the company for more than 12 months, they get 80 hours. And then it also tells me that the employee cannot carry over any hours. So on their anniversary, they are going to get 80 hours. And then the next step is going to be if they've been with the company longer than the 60 months or 5 years, they're going to get 120 hours. Now, something that you've got to take into consideration, and a lot of people miss this, is that your benefit, which a PTO is considered a benefit, is not actually earned until you process payroll. So let's just use an example. Let's say someone's anniversary date is on February 14th, okay, Valentine's Day. So their anniversary date is on February 14th. Their anniversary crosses, they log into Mypay, and they're like, where's my balance? I don't see it. Well, that's because you haven't processed payroll yet for that pay period. So maybe you don't actually process payroll for that pay period until the following week. And maybe that payroll gets processed on February 20th, just as an example. So what's going to happen is when you go to process payroll, it's going to look at anybody whose anniversary occurred within that pay period, and it's going to adjust their balance at that time. Same way that it works for time taken. So if someone has requested time off through Mypay, or if you have a timekeeping system and you're keying hours for time off, right? And you put them in payroll, as soon as that payroll is processed is when the balance will be reflected. So you're going to be able to know that the employee has earned PTO as well as any PTO the employee has potentially taken. Okay, so that is how the PTO accruals are set up, or accruals in general are set up. That's step one, all right? So step two is going to be that if you want your employees to be able to request time off within Mypay. Okay, so when we set up your account, then what we're going to do is we've got some preferences here, right? So in order for the employee to be able to see or request time off, you have to, now seeing the information tabs already available, but we go into the individual preferences for if they can actually see their hours, right? So the employee can make requests. This has to be checked because you have to be able to allow them to request time off, right? And to do that, you've got to have the request area available for them. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then if you get into the individual preferences, so I'm in the information preferences. So the information, that first tab in Mypay or self-serve, I would recommend you log into Mypay if you're not real familiar with where everything's laid out, so this makes more sense. And then what I did was by checking the box for enable viewing time off and enable viewing the time off calendar, I'm allowing the employee to see what their time off balances are. Okay, so if you are a new client and you haven't started to load your balances yet, you may not want those checked right away. That's the first part. The second part, if you're allowing them to request time off, okay, so I allow them to request time off, right? So I've got this box checked, okay? But that's not where it stops, because what time off do we want to allow them to request? Because we may have multiple codes. So I next go into the time off setup, Okay, so then the time off setup. So for this company, it appears that none of their policies are available for the employees to see or request off in Mypay. Now that may be what you want, but if you actually want the employee to be able to request, let's say, PTO, then you can say, okay, PTO is, and I'm just going to call it PTO, and I want to allow the employee to request it, right? And maybe you have a list of holidays and you have a calendar and you say, I don't want the holidays to be included in these requests. And maybe I want to exclude the weekends depending on your schedule, right? And do you have an 8-hour work day? And if so, when an employee makes a day request, it's going to automatically calculate it at 8 hours. Most people do. And then you want to show PTO in self-service. So if I click on that button, then the employee, when they log into Mypay, are able to see PTO. Now, the employee being the employees that have PTO in their setup. Okay, we'll cover that a little bit later. All right, so in addition to that, I can say I want them to require a comment. So maybe they request time off, but I need to give me a reason, basically. And then do I also want to have a nice little color in the calendar? So maybe all my PTO requests are green, right? And so I would add each policy like this, and I would save it, which would allow it to be visible to display in Mypay so the employee can request time off. Okay, so that's how that works. And then you also, I'm going to cancel this. You also have the time off calendar as well. So if I want the calendar to display in Mypay, which is nice and it looks good, then I can do that as well. And you just got a few preferences here that you would choose and save, and then that way right now I'm only displaying the holiday calendar, but if I also wanted to have everyone be able to see the time off request, then I can do that too. And you've got some filters here, so if you only want employees in the same department to be able to see this information, right, if that's a concern, then you can certainly adjust that. Okay, so that's the second part. So I have seen how the accruals are set up. I have now seen how the accruals work as far as the setup and self-service. Now, what if an employee requests time off, right? So if an employee does make a time off request, then before processing payroll, I recommend that you go in and you look and you see if there are any time off requests, right? So I'm going to go into this time off request because obviously Mypay doesn't have anything set up for this company. You don't have any requests. If you did, then you could approve or deny request with a comment and send it, and that would send an email notification back to the employee with an updated status of their request. Now, last thing on time off is you've also got this time off request edit. The reason that you've got this is because sometimes an employee will request time off or take time off but didn't have time to request it. So someone's sick, for example, they're not necessarily going to plan ahead to get sick, and if you want to be able to record it, and then this is where you could do it. So I could go ahead and record it on behalf of the employee, and by doing that, right, so maybe this employee took PTO, keep in mind you need to look at the name, make sure you're doing it for the right person, and this is also going to affect their balance. It'll be pulled into the same report as the other time off from Mypay, and then it allows the employee to see that time off request, and now you have the correct dates recorded for when they were absent. All right, so that's a lot of information to cover, but that is how the accruals are set up. That's how the accruals are set up in Mypay, and that's how the accruals are approved.